The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. Airing first on Asheville FM, WSFM LP at 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you are interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of the show, you are free to do so. Just send us an email if you end up using any of the content. If you like, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. This show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop. This week, we had the opportunity to connect with Vanessa Bolin, who is an Indigenous artist, community organizer, and activist who has been helping with flood rescue and rebuilding efforts after Hurricane Florence in Lumberton, North Carolina, which is in Robeson County. In this interview, we talk about what still needs to be done in that area, how to help out, and the importance of foregrounding marginalized voices in mutual aid efforts. Stay tuned at the end of the show for more notes, links, and some suggested further reading.
This week we bring you a huge bundle of announcements, mostly about prisoner support. Please listen in at the end of the show for parole help requests from political prisoners Julio Muntekim and Casey Brezik, support for the prison rebels, the Vaughn 17, and the 4 prisoners in North Carolina being punished that we know of for alleged strike participation.
Would you just say your name if you desire to do that, and a few words about yourself and what you're doing right now?
Absolutely. My name is Vanessa Bolin, and I am an Indigenous artist, activist, community organizer, and most recently I have been in Lumberton, North Carolina, assisting with the flood rescue and recovery efforts that are going on in the area. Also working on multiple pipeline issues that are affecting West Virginia, and North Carolina.
There's so many of those.
Yes, I got a call today that up in West Virginia, the MVP has actually dug up a Native American gravesite that a property owner made them aware of, and they put the bones and the artifacts in a box and carted them away. And people have been reaching out saying, hey, we've got to do something about this, but they're being told, well, there are no recognized tribes in the area, and people seem at a loss of what to do. But it's just another example of how the pipeline companies have no regard for anyone, including graves and the dead.
Mm-hmm. And it's been such a, phenomenally destructive and disturbing aspect of these extraction companies, as we have seen over and over and over again.
Absolutely. It's systemic, and it's just the rape of the earth, and it's genocide of communities. They do not care who they destroy, what they destroy, as long as they're getting profits in their pocket. They're just moving ahead with their agenda. It's actually environmental racism because they target Indigenous communities, people of color, poor. You never see a pipeline running through the middle of some bougie, rich neighborhood or a predominantly white area. You just don't see that.
And like with Standing Rock, too, it only, for example, only got routed through ancestral territory because a white town complained that it was going to go through their area.
Oh, they complained that it would destroy their water. And therefore, the pipeline company says, no problem, we'll just move it down by the reservation. The good thing is, it's nothing really good about that situation, but the Supreme Court has sided with the Standing Rock Sioux tribe that the pipeline was illegally built. Unfortunately, the judge has also allowed the oil to continue to flow. instead of making them stop and dig it up. So that pipeline has leaked multiple times, and it will continue to leak because all pipelines leak, regardless of their cutting-edge technology. No matter what they do, every pipeline leaks. There's a danger, and people just will not care until hundreds of thousands of gallons of oil taints their water, and then they don't have potable water. Then they'll care.
Then they will, and then they'll, I don't even know. Yeah,
Then it's too late.
Thank you so much for talking about that. We're here to talk about autonomous relief efforts in so-called North Carolina after Hurricane Florence, as they pertain to Indigenous people who are living in this area. Would you speak about
Yes.
The Lumbee people in a historical and also present-day context?
I will be glad to. I do want to let you know I am not speaking on behalf of the Lumbee tribe. I do not have permission to do that. But what I can tell you is what I know and what I've observed. I do know that the Lumbee tribe is the largest tribe east of the Mississippi, and they have sought federal recognition. I believe they did gain federal recognition for a moment, and then it was taken away from them. Very mixed group of people, but they very much identify as Indigenous, as Lumbee. And in Robeson County, where the heart of the Lumbee tribe is 65% Indigenous. There's other tribes that are around it. They're Indigenous, people of color, Hispanic, and others. So 65%. It's also the largest county in North Carolina and absolutely the poorest. So the tribe is there. People do identify as Lumbee. They identify as Indigenous. They're a state-recognized tribe. So today they have multi-buildings throughout the county, and they do have culture classes. They have language that they're bringing back. They do have a really deep culture there and history of being in the area. They've been there forever. I mean, it's their traditional territories and mixed race. Their skin tones are from white passing to very dark. But you know them and they know each other. So it's a very tight-knit community in a lot of ways, but the people live in a massive amount of area in North Carolina. So I have been working, actually, this is related to pipelines. When I heard about the hurricane, I contacted Robbie Goins, who is one of the people who helped start Eco Robeson, that is actually fighting the ACP, which here again has targeted an Indigenous community. And I went down to build and work with him and some other tribal members to try to start some relief efforts before the flooding even begun. We knew this was going to happen, just did not know the extent that it was going to happen there. It was like the never-ending flood. Every time you turned around, there was a levee breaking, something breaching, and the floodwaters kept coming. They would recede, something else would break or breach, and it would flood even more. So the devastation I've seen there, the people I've talked to, has been unreal. And Robbie kind of got hemmed in. He lives in Pembroke, which is just outside of Lumberton, and he could not get out. So I went out. I had taken a canoe with me. There were a lot of people down there with boats. So a lot of autonomous groups showed up to give support, to do rescue. And it just so happened that I ran into Tammy and Jerome Chavis, who had a boat. I had my medic bag, and I yelled out to them. They had an ambulance, an old ambulance they had purchased that they were pulling the boat with and kind of operating out of this. And I said, I'm a medic. Do you need some help? And they said, yes, hop in. And so from there, I started working with these folks to build not only some rescue, but start doing some relief efforts, and connected with multi-groups from outside of North Carolina and some in North Carolina to start getting supplies in of food and water and diapers and baby formula. And other people stepped up and gave us space to store things in as we delivered. And then we started reaching out to the community at large of local neighborhood grandmas and community voices and putting bulk things in their hand. But the whole relief effort, while we've turned no one away, has really been targeted to help the Indigenous people who are in the area who were affected by the flood. Unfortunately, the area is so massive that not everyone has been touched. We have sent out multiple truckloads of food and diapers and water and supplies to people from Lumbee Tribal Council. It's just not enough. There are so many groups there working, but the area is so large. There are still pockets of people we're hearing about who have not seen the first bit of supplies. It's terrifying to think of what are happening to these people. The floodwaters, while they have receded some, we turn around 5-6 days later and say, oh, this area has flooded again, or the floodwaters are just not receding the way they need to. People trapped in their homes and people who are able to go back into their homes, they're literally destroyed. Some of the watermarks are 4 and 5 feet high. Some of them are only 6 inches high. But regardless of what that is, it has to be torn out, cleaned up. So the amount of relief effort there is just tremendous on a scale that's kind of mind-boggling when you look at the size and the amount of damage that's been done.
That is really, really terrifying. And it is also just also terrifying to hear that there are people who haven't even seen a little bit of supplies yet, because there seemingly has been a lot of supplies sent to the area.
Absolutely. And people are still sending supplies, even though it's slowed to a trickle. So some parts of the community are starting on the cleanup process and asking for cleaning supplies, which is great. We're trying to get those in. There almost seems to be a vacuum of people not even knowing that this is going on. Social media has kind of done this shutdown of the disaster that's happened there. You don't hear about it on the news. I've talked to people who live 4 hours from there, who live in North Carolina, who have no idea that the Lumberton area or any of those areas were still flooded are in need. So it's like this vacuum, like this, almost like intentionally not letting the story out of the support that's needed. That is terrifying as well.
What do you think is going on there concerning what this media blind spot or blackout is caused by?
I have absolutely no idea. I really cannot fathom how the government, the local news media, newspaper reporters, how people are not following this. How are they just ignoring this situation? I don't know what the problem is, but there's definitely a problem. There are, like I said, multiple autonomous groups who are out there just doing everything they can. There's just not enough of us. And the supplies, while they come in, they go out just as fast as they come in. Nobody is hoarding the supplies. I can tell you that the county and city have supplies. How they're distributing their supplies, I do not know, but I know it's not enough, and that where the bulk of the supplies and the help is coming from is from outside communities and local community organizers who have teamed up with various groups to try to help people. There are groups who are just focusing on just putting food and water and basic supplies. And remember, this is the poorest county in North Carolina. So those people who do have jobs, most of them are in the service industry of some kind, have been out of work for 10, 11, 15 days. So paycheck to paycheck families have now been set back months. They're just now starting to kind of recover from the flood that happened in 2016, and here they've been hit again. We're already getting reports of people who are having landlords say, hey, move out, and by the way, I'm fixing the place up. You're not going to be able to live here because I'm going to up the rent because there's going to be a housing crunch, because there are some of the neighborhoods that were flooded, severely flooded, were very bougie and upper class neighborhoods. I would call them middle class neighborhoods, but they're going to have to find some place to live. So therefore, this has just created a horrible domino effect, almost like that happened in Katrina in New Orleans, where communities of people of color and poor folks who live there. I have a friend who lived in New Orleans proper, and her rent went from $300 a month to $3,000. So this is going to happen there, where the people with resources are looking for somewhere else to live, while their houses are being repaired that are displacing the family beneath them. And a lot of these houses were in very poor condition anyway, not in great shape, and this flood has just made it so much worse. I've been in homes where black mold is already crawling up the walls, and people have nowhere else to go, no resources to go anywhere else. They just don't. So they're staying in these homes that have black mold. Respiratory issues are already being seen. People with funguses on their skin from being in the flood waters, which were putrid and nasty. It's just a nightmare scenario, but on a huge, huge scale. I'm at a loss. I just know that the folks I've been working with, we just keep trying. We just keep getting things in and putting them into this community's hands. We're liaisoning with other groups. We're reaching out to the tribe on a regular basis. There are multiple people down there with health issues. This is an indigenous community, so therefore diabetes is real. It is just an astronomical number of indigenous people who have diabetes. There are people who went to shelters, but because there was no real thought given other than here, eat some food, they've been having to ration their insulin or take more or less. I was unable to use my debit card for over 10 days while I was there. So therefore, everything was shut down. Drugstores finally started open, and there are day-long waits for people to get their medication that they desperately need if their doctor's offices are open and available to give them a new prescription. So this is just a nightmare scenario in a very marginalized community that is poor and working class folks that have now been set back in a really significant way. It would not surprise me to start hearing of whole families who are homeless. And unfortunately, a lot of people lost their cars. There was one neighborhood I was trying to go to, and I'm in this boat, and all of a sudden I looked down, and what I thought was a yellow sign actually was a vehicle underwater, completely submerged, that the boat went right over to the top. And then there was a truck a little bit further down that we could see submerged. And all I kept thinking was, is there somebody in that vehicle? It's horrible. I know they say that the number of people who died because of the hurricane was 15. I find that incredibly unrealistic. I believe there's more. I believe that there are more that will be found, if ever found. There were people who stayed in their homes, literally put out a call of distress, please come get me. Areas that had never flooded in the past, had water coming up into their house, and they had no clue. They had not evacuated, and then suddenly there's an evacuation order given, but it's nighttime, and they did not know until they woke up and found the floodwaters. I actually spoke with one of the elders from the tribe, and she told me that she has lived there her whole life, and she said, I've never seen anything like this. She said, I've never seen this kind of flooding here. It's historic. And yet news media is not covering it. The resources that are needed are not coming in. from the federal government. And if they did, would they be adequate? I'm certain they wouldn't. So if the world just poured forth right now, I believe it would take years for this community to recover in any kind of significant way.
I think that you drew a few really important parallels in what you just said, and the first that I noticed was the parallel between the hurricane damage and pipeline activity on the part of pipeline industries. And also, I thought that you made a really important point about just the long-term effects of this kind of environmental catastrophe on especially poor communities, communities of color, indigenous communities, because you mentioned like landlords being predatory now. Like we saw in Katrina, You mentioned people's jobs who were precarious to begin with now being unemployed, now having no resources, being months behind on their bills, on their rent, on their needs for their kids. Yeah, I just think that sometimes in efforts like these, people tend to focus really heavily on like first response and like in the first week of a disaster, but like tend to have and you said the supplies have slowed to a trickle, and I feel like people just tend to forget that there are long-term effects of these things, especially on poor rural communities.
It is, and this is all intersectional. I had multiple people say, I can't believe this happened in 2016. They said it was a once-in-a-lifetime flood. Here we are like 2 years later with flooding again. Surely this can't happen. And I said, it's going to happen again. It's going to be more flooding. It's going to be bigger because this flooding is a product of climate change. And right now is exactly the kind of scenario that the pipeline company will take advantage of and come in and sneak in and try to start pushing their agenda, start building, try to get people to take money who have held out before. Remember, the Lumbee tribe at first was going to go along with this. The tribal members said, we don't want this. They said, okay, we'll not go along. But this is the kind of scenario where the poverty of this community will be used against them to push forward the agenda of putting in the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. So not only are people trying to rebuild their lives, just figure out what they're going to do, they're having to watch this frack gas pipeline company, this greedy corporation, going to take advantage of that and swoop in with dollars and try to buy their way into the community. It's like a nightmare scenario in so many ways. It's mind-blowing. And so many times I've just sit down and I've got tears in my eyes going, how do autonomous groups, how does this community continue to stand up to protect the health of their water, their land, their air against this fossil fuel industry while trying to recover from this hellacious and huge flooding that has happened? Like, where will they draw the line and say, we're going to choose to have both? Are they going to give in and say, yes, we've got to help our people recover, so therefore we're going to take this money? And then how do they distribute that money? Like I said, the Lumbee tribe is the largest tribe east of the Mississippi. They have a lot of people. Are those resources going to be enough? And are they going to think ahead to the next 7 generations, the next group of youth and the future of their tribe? Are they going to think ahead, or are they just going to look at the here and now because resources are not coming in the way they need to help them?
There's so many things at play in this situation. So you've mentioned like federal recognition a few times. Are the Lumbee folks currently a federally recognized tribe? And does this recognition play a role in centralized relief efforts? And if so, how does that end up working out?
Right. Good question. Right now, the Lumbee are state recognized. They are not a federally recognized tribe. They have had paperwork in. Like I said at the beginning, I do believe At one moment in time, they were granted federal recognition, and then that was withdrawn, which is not unheard of. I mean, there's just a case right now of a federally recognized tribe that has been unrecognized, pretty much at the whim of the federal government. But if they had federal recognition, there would be some additional resources that they could draw upon. Unfortunately, it would not be enough. People seem to think federally recognized tribes get everything handed to them, but the truth of the matter is there's just not enough money ever to really help tribes move forward and move out of poverty. I'm actually working on an article right now talking about that very thing, about the poverty and the systemic issues on reservations and for Indigenous people. And remember, there's like one lump sum of money that is put into a pot. It has to be divvied up. And I know that Virginia just has 6 new federally recognized tribes, and people are under, I think, sometimes a false belief that they're going to get all these benefits from being federally recognized. Federal recognition just makes them autonomous and gives them certain rights as a sovereign nation. But the medical care provided by HS, here again, is funded from one lump sum, and it's not enough. There are many times that hospitals even have to shut down because there aren't enough people to cover the hospital. The doctors and nurses, who many of them are very committed, are just overwhelmed with trying to do the work that needs to be done, and then funds dry up. I've heard the joke many times, don't get sick after August because you're going to be in really bad shape. There's just not enough money given to the tribes. So if the tribe was federally recognized, yes, there would be some resources that they could reach out for. Since they're not, that is not available to them. This is kind of one of those things where Indigenous communities pretty much across the board struggle. And people don't realize that they're not given half of what people think they're given. The things that they are given are not enough. The commodities boxes, I tell people all the time that the smallpox blankets were replaced with commodities boxes. Everything in it is causing disease and ailments in the community. They're just trying to kill us off with these commodities boxes full of white flour, white sugar, white rice, powdered milk. None of it is traditional foods. Our bodies just are not able to handle those things. So it's a whole show unto itself. It's books unto itself. It's whole programming that could be done about the problems on reservations and within Indigenous communities. But the good thing is, and the most beautiful thing and the important thing for people to remember, is that Indigenous food sovereignty, one day it will be a thing. Being housing safe is going to be a thing. Having clean water is going to be a thing. It's going to happen, and there are good people out there making it happen, and they need to have you listen to their voice. So those are important things for people to remember. People are out there fighting for the rights of their people, and supporting them are paramount to their success.
Yeah, thank you for walking our listeners and walking me through that. I feel like there's such a misunderstanding of what federal recognition means, so thanks for going into that for us. So you've spoken about your efforts on the ground and the things that you've seen, but I was wondering if you wouldn't mind speaking about your efforts to specifically center Indigenous people in post-Florence or like post-disaster relief efforts.
Yes. So in 2016, when they had flooding before, a lot of the Indigenous communities in the area were kind of ignored. When federal supplies came in, things like that, our Red Cross and EOC, these communities were forgotten about. And it's usually the case that the most marginalized people are not the first one to get resources. So my goal in going down there and building with the grassroots communities that were there were to center the Indigenous voices, to empower that community to get supplies into their hands. The groups that I've worked with, the people who are community leaders there that are now becoming community organizers, have this goal of making sure that their people, because everyone I'm building with and working with are Lumbee, they are strong voices for their people, and their goal is to help their people, but also take a look at all the community who live there. So they're turning no one away, but they really are making a superb and extreme effort to make sure that the Indigenous people are supplied first and quickly, and that's who they reach out to and say, come get these supplies for your community, or we take them to those communities where we know there are large populations and neighborhoods, reaching out to people in the shelters who there's Purnell sweat that is there, that probably 99% of the people in there were Lumbee. Unfortunately, the shelter would not allow us to go in to give out supplies. So I know there were various times that we went out and stood outside of the shelter and went and sent someone in and said, hey, we've got some food, we've got a few things here, come and get this. We did the best we could to get things into their hands that way. There are still people in shelters right now who slowly are trying to go back to their homes, but then returning saying, I can't live there, what am I going to do? But we are very focused on trying to make sure that the Indigenous community is served and not forgotten about. Anytime we hear of a need, if somebody reaches out, be it like I was following Messenger and my text messages and would try to look at Facebook when I had time, and if I saw something posted of somebody from the Lumbee or the Tuscarora or any of those tribes in there that needed support, I would immediately reach out to them. Other people would reach out to them and say, what do you need? And we would take it directly to them. Instead of depending on anybody else or reaching out further, we would try to go right to them. Here again, it is such a large area that surely there are people being missed, and we are hearing about them. But as soon as we hear about it, we load up a truck, we reach out, we say, hey, we've got to get supplies and things there. There's just not enough hands, not enough supplies. Everybody there is doing the best they can. And it's a beautiful thing to see the community come together. It's been very touching and humbling to see people come in and say, hey, I need this. And when we try to give them a little extra, and they'll go, no, somebody else needs that. I'm just going to take this because that's what I need. I have seen a few people who just go from place to place to place to get supplies, but 99% of the people that I see are humble, and they're just taking what they need and leaving the rest for the next person in need. And they're helping out their neighbors. They're saying, I know that my neighbor next door has children and has not been able to get out. Their car was flooded. And can I pick up a box of diapers? They're not saying, give me a lot of stuff. They're taking what their neighbor needs and being very humble and good about it. So community is coming together and just very touching in how giving they are and loving and respectful. It's been truly an honor to be working in that community and to see the love that everybody is showing to one another and sharing what they have. And it's been beautiful to see matriarchs in the community step up and say, I've got 5 families. This is their direct needs. And if we try to give them more, they go, no, this is what they need. This is what I know the needs are of this 5 or 10 families. And they will just swoop it up and take it back and pass it out. And they're becoming community leaders. These matriarchs, these grandmas, these grandpas who are coming forward and saying, we need help, and this is our needs. And they're taking that upon themselves. And it's been a beautiful thing to see young people come in and work at the warehouse space that we have, of gathering up boxes for people, unloading trucks, loading up vehicles, going out to shelters, taking food, doing these things. The youth are stepping up, and that's what we need to do as the elders. I don't want to call myself an elder, but as the elders, is empower the youth to become responsible for their community, to do this work as well. And that's how they learn, and that's what is happening. And it's been very beautiful to see that happen.
That's really, really moving to hear on this end as well. It's really, really gorgeous to see examples of people banding together to, for survival, but also, flourishing in spite of it all, Before I move on to the next question, since these are autonomous efforts, you're not getting any help from organizations like, FEMA or the Red Cross. How can people directly support the work that you're doing right now? Like, can they donate to somewhere? Or you said you need hands on the ground too. So is there a good way for people to plug into those efforts as well?
Absolutely. The Interfaith Action Climate Justice, IACJ, has a fundraiser up that specifically is targeting the Indigenous communities and all of Robeson County. You can reach out on Facebook, find their page, it's IACJ. And then there is folks from the Black Flag who have stepped up. My friend Raven Dotson, who was amazing support out in Standing Rock, to the Standing Rock folks, and especially to the medics who were there. She is in charge of the Black Flags that are serving Robeson County in that area. And as far as boots on the ground, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, people just willing to come and muck and do tear out and clean up yards, because there are trees and limbs, cutting crews, you name it, it's needed there. You can reach out to any of these groups and say, how can I plug in? Oh, and one more thing, if anybody speaks fluent Spanish, there is a need. There is a community of people who need supplies, who need your support and solidarity. So if you're a fluent Spanish speaker, street medic, just a person willing to do a thing, yes, please, you're needed. Reach out in your local community, especially in and around where you're at, and ask about those things. There are people who know, who can point you in the right direction. The one thing I do ask that people not do, please do not donate to the Red Cross. Please don't do that. Don't give them supplies. It never filters into the hands of the community that needs it. They hoard it, they hold on to it, and it does not flow in. I watched that happen in Houston. I was in Houston helping do some flood relief, and I watched it. People just begging for a pair of socks to put on because they had lost their shoes and their socks in the flood. And there were people like myself who were on the streets taking care of flesh-eating bacteria because they would not help out inside of the Red Cross shelter. So don't give to them. Find those grassroots groups. Reach directly out to the Lumbee tribe. Say, how can we support you? How can we help? But I do know that the ICJ has a fundraiser up that is to target that community. There are people from Appalachian, an autonomous group, who have been bringing in tremendous amounts of supplies, sending people in to help out. So there are groups out there, but those are the ones that I can tell you I personally am working with, building with, know that they're doing good work, and I know that they're very open, even to the point of laying out the books for the world to see and say, if you have questions, contact us. They're showing pictures of the money they have and where the money's going. So it's all going directly into the hands of the people and being used to buy supplies, to help put gas in people's cars so they can make deliveries. There are good people out there doing good work. So you can reach out to any of those people. I know they're doing what they're saying they're doing.
Since most of the folks who listen to this show are, anarchist or at least anarchist sympathizing, do you have any specific asks of anarchist communities around the country or around the world, or specific suggestions for anarchists as far as solidarity with this work goes?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. I have dealt with these Lumbee community folks, and they've become organizers. They're quickly catching on to who's helping, and who are helping right now are the anarchists, are the radical folks who are seeing the need, who are stepping up. We need more help. Please see this community. Please see what is happening. We need street medics. We need boots on the ground. We need your support. I know most people work in some sort of restaurant, service industry, whatever. Please just think about putting a box outside and getting it to one of the local groups. Have somebody drive it in. I know it's a lot of money. Or just send money. We need help there. There is so much that needs to be done. Please see us. Please see this community. See this tribe of people that have faced historic trauma, are being denied their right to be federally recognized, but still holding on to their culture, living the life that is traditionally theirs. See them and see what's being ignored. We need you. We need you. They need you. And reach out, organize, come help. We need you. People from up in Appalachian and Boonway have stepped up in a real way. Multiple groups have stepped up from the radical side of it all and stepped up and have helped. But the community leaders who are now becoming community organizers, who are getting it, who are working with folks that they would never in the past have worked with, but they see what they're doing. And when I explain it, I'm older, so I can look at these older folks and I can say, look at these people. These are people that you've heard really negative things about in the press. And I said, but look here who is supporting you. Look what these young people, these anarchists, these radicals are doing to support you and your community. And they're getting it, and they're doing radical changes in their thinking, and they're seeing these people. I said, so instead of judging, look at their actions and who is showing up for you, and they're getting it. And they're becoming community organizers. So seeing the community take that kind of power, just empowering themselves with support from us is beautiful. I'm not there to tell them what to do. I'm there to help guide them and show them what can be. And they're the ones who are doing the work. They're the ones who are making the calls. And they're getting it. And that's amazing to see.
Is the drop-off spot in Durham still a thing that is useful?
Yes. So Durham has a big collection point. A lot of times people will drive in, and they've been amazing about us being able to reach out and say, hey, we need more food, we need more water, we need baby supplies, we need cleaning supplies, and they're able to get it into us. Things are having to be brought in by car or by truck. So things have slowed down. I have multiple times heard of tractor trailers that were supposed to be dropping off supplies, but so far those have not materialized. Still crossing my fingers that that's going to happen, because that would be tremendous to try to push out much needed supplies into the further reaches of the county. If somebody has a truck or a trailer and wants to come down and help deliver supplies, that would be great. But the street medic community, please step up. You're my people. We need you to come. That is a piece that has not been done. It is scary. But the reason is that it literally went from rescue, and people did reach out at first and say, hey, do you want me to come? Do you want me to come? And I would say yes, and I would say no, don't come here. Myself, being there from the beginning, I had to move 4 times because of floodwater. Like 4 times I had to move and do some quick adjustments and find a place to stay because it was flooding. Roads were closing. Those roads are open now. 95 is clear. 40 is open. 74 is open. You can get to the community now, and we need you to turn out in numbers and come and hit these communities, find those needs, There are very few of us that are on the ground doing that work, but we need you to come. And I know everyone has a life. Everybody has bills to pay. But if you can spare even 2 or 3 days, it would be a beautiful thing if you could just take one portion of that county, and if it requires knocking on doors or showing up at a local community center or a shelter or whatever, it would be a beautiful thing to try to check in medically. There's a lot of respiratory issues there. Like I said, I was seeing fungal infections. People living in these homes with mold and mildew growing up the walls. The herbalist, you can do amazing things with your powerful medicine. You're needed. And if you've got tinctures or teas or something that you know can help with those things, send them, please send them. They're needed. But having those boots on the ground would be a huge relief and a huge help.
Definitely, and I know that there's a lot of anarchist herbalists in Asheville specifically.
Asheville's turned out hard and heavy. I cannot thank them enough for their support. They know who they are. I will not call them out by name. Asheville and Boone have showed up. There's one special person I would love to be able to call their name, but I'm not going to, who I made a call to, and I said, I am at capacity. I need your help. And they know me well enough that for me to swallow almost my pride and reach out and say, I need your help and advice, and I need you to come now. And they showed up, and that was somebody from the Asheville area. Thank you very much. They have stepped up hard and heavy. We need other people, though. I mean, people are having to go home and work their jobs. They're having to go home and handle their business. I had to step away for a minute to come home to pay my bills and now figure out how to get back down there. I've made a commitment to this community that as long as they need me for however long, I'll continue to come in and out and support them and do whatever they ask. And one important thing in the anarchist world, because you'll all understand this, even though this is not a reservation, you need to come in with the attitude that it is. And I have stressed this to everyone, that the indigenous voice is the voice you need to listen to. Do not come in with your own agenda and your own ideas. You check in with these people and find out how they want to see their relief efforts look. Do they want this? How do they want that to happen? Like, what support can we give them? I just am so protective right now of that community and those voices that are now saying, okay, I see, I can speak out and I have a say-so in what happens here, which is a beautiful thing to see people grow and become community organizers. Just value and respect these people and listen to their voice of how they want this to look.
Definitely. Thank you so much for bringing that into it. I think that's a really important aspect of any mutual aid project, and especially if you're in a place where you're a guest of other folks. You know. Where can people see that article that you mentioned that you were writing?
I am working on it. I'll be submitting it tonight. It's for an international magazine of kind of like relief work. I have not been back from the Pine Ridge Reservation like maybe 3 weeks ago. I don't remember. I lost track of days from being out in Lumberton. But there's a wonderful program out there, and I met someone who was there from International Relief, and we got to talking, and I guess they liked what I was saying and asked me to write an article. So as soon as I know that, I can let you know. But it is a magazine that they put out, and there's a couple of articles coming out that talk about what's happening out in Pine Ridge and how they're trying to, this Indigenous Wisdom and Permaculture Convergence, how they're trying to bring food sovereignty and also solve their housing situation through sustainable efforts that are going to be multi-generational homes and build gardens and start food centers, because that's a whole another show and another story of how a lot of indigenous communities don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables and good food, and live in subpar housing that are many times mobile homes that they're not given money to maintain. With the weather there, in the Dakotas, it doesn't take but one straight line wind to mess up the whole thing. And then getting money to fix that is nearly impossible. So they're working on earth shelters or ship shelters, and beautiful things are happening. So I went out and I served as the medic and just did a little work out there. So there's some articles that are starting to appear about that. Be on the lookout. So that's a whole nother show and another story.
Certainly, and yeah, it's such a huge topic and an issue that runs just through the fabric of everything.
Yeah.
Do you have any suggestions for, like, if listeners are interested in learning more about the things that you're talking about? Do you have any books or resources that you would recommend?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. One thing that is really positively happening that I feel after being there and working is everyone should take a look at the Indigenous Wisdom Permaculture Convergence Model that Brian Dean from Pine Ridge is doing. And there's several places out there of the earthships they're building, of the aquaponics system that they're working on, of their in-ground greenhouses that they're working on. They're going down below the frost line. That if not only should that be just a model for the reservations there, but across the world. Like, look at these things that are being built. There's a lot of projects out there that are happening like this, but I really admire what they have built so far, and I could see this being truly a way for people to become independent of fossil fuels because they're putting in solar panels and they're just becoming sustainable living centers. And it would be an excellent way for not only reservation and indigenous people to be able to have these things and have security, but across the country, across the world. Do a lot of research. I've read some good books. I've looked at some things, but I kind of find that everybody has their own spin on situations. Do your research. Dig a little deeper. Keep looking and find those obscure articles that people are ignoring and take a look and see where those projects have went and how that's looking. But definitely I would recommend that. Pay attention to the Dene. Look at the Navajo area about their struggle with clean water because of the mining industry, that there's so much uranium and things, and the water that they can't drink their water. They're having to cart water in by 50-gallon barrels and things like that. And whole families are using just a few gallons of water a day because it's so hard to get it in. Just start doing your research. People in our community are smart enough, educated enough, savvy enough to go digging and looking for those things. Yes, there are good books. Can I just pop them off the top of my head? No, I'm sorry, I can't. And I'm sure you understand that my mind's whirling with multiple projects that I'm involved in. But this right here with the Lumbee tribe and the situation there with the flooding has weighed so heavily on my mind that, and then the pipeline issues, that I'm at capacity of thinking.
I hear that. Thank you so much for going there with me. And I hear you being at capacity too. And, you know, I think that it's really awesome that somebody stepped up to take some of the weight off of you specifically, and hopefully that will happen more and people will start sharing the load with doing this work. Do you feel like letting people know where they can see your artwork?
Yes. So usually what I do is when I have time, I make regalia and ribbon skirts and shirts and jewelry, and I just post it up online and say, hey, this is for sale. It's usually from my Facebook page, but I also have Water Protector Arts, which is not solely dedicated. It's a Facebook page. It's not solely dedicated to me. I'm not the only one on there. I actually started it when I came back from Standing Rock as a place for people who were trying to rebuild their lives, people who were at Standing Rock to be able to post their artwork and just try to make some sales so that they could start rebuilding their lives. So sometimes I post stuff up there. but usually it's just on my Facebook page. That's just the way I do it. I dedicate as much time to it as I'm able to, which here lately has been very minimal. And I do have a few earrings and a couple of things that I can put up online if people want to go and take a look at them. But Water Protector Arts on Facebook is a page that is dedicated for people who are at Standing Rock to sell artwork and their wares and goods to help earn them a living.
Those are all of the questions that I had written out. Is there anything that you wanted to add as part of this interview, or any words that you'd leave listeners with?
Yes, I just want to thank every single solid person who has given, who has stepped up to help, who are doing food drives and supply drives, who are paying attention, who, if you have nothing else but good thoughts to send our way, I appreciate you. And I see the powerful work that you, as that community, as the youth, that you're building the world you want. I appreciate you. I see you, and I thank you for it. There's so much going on in the world, and I'm honored and proud to work within this community. And I hope one day I can work on projects and build with you all. But I appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this interview and to let the voice of that community, or the story of that community, because I'm certainly not their voice. I'm just telling their story. But thank you for hearing that and for giving us it time and space on your show. It means the world, and it could mean literally life for this community. So thank you for that.
This is William with a few additional notes. Our guest mentioned the Interfaith Alliance for Climate Justice, or IACJ, which has a fundraiser right now that is benefiting the indigenous communities of Robeson County. You can hit them up on Facebook and search for their donation link, which we will post on the blog and show notes, or you can go directly to iacjva.org to donate that way. Mutual Aid Disaster Relief is also coordinating a bunch of efforts. You can learn more about this group at mutualaiddisasterrelief.org or look them up on any social media platform. If you have 4 to 14 days to spare and want to get down to Robeson County to help out, especially if you have proficiency in Spanish and skills in logistical coordination, you can send them an email to get networked in at wekeepussafevc@protonmail.com. There's also a GoFundMe for mutual aid efforts in Asheville benefiting affected areas in Robeson County. Just go to GoFundMe.com and search for Mutual Aid Relief Supplies NC. Here are some links to things our guest mentioned. To learn more about the Indigenous Wisdom Permaculture Model and Convergence, you can visit iwpsconvergence.com. To see the Water Protector Arts Facebook page, you can just go to Facebook and search the name of the page. And to reach directly out to the Lumbee tribe, if you are intending to do support work, you can follow the link at lumbeetribe.com, and that's Lumbee. Some things we'd like to mention. When Vanessa talks about the struggles of the Dene people, who are sometimes known as Navajo, where she mentions uranium mining, this is a huge issue that spans many generations. You can visit Black Mesa Resistance, which is an organized effort in Black Mountain and Big Mesa, also known as Arizona, on the part of the Dene and Hopi people to defend themselves and their existences. You can learn more about this effort at blackmesa.resist.org, and resist is spelled with an R-E-Z, and follow links there for further material to learn about the history and present-day projects and struggles. And finally, for a look into some of the truly amazing legacy of the Lumbee tribe in so-called North Carolina, we at The Final Straw recommend the book To Die Game by William McKee Evans. This book details a resistance movement at a time when Lumbee youth were being targeted for conscription into the Confederate Army, and how they, along with a diverse coalition of other resistors, eluded capture in the swamps of eastern North Carolina for over 5 years. You can also read about this in the book Dixie Be Damned, along with many other lesser-reported moments of resistance in the American Southeast. The music used in this show is the track...
All right, listeners, here's a bunch of requests for letters of support from prisoners in the so-called U.S. First up, let's hit up the political prisoners. Jalil Muntaqim is a former member of the Black Panther Party and Black Liberation Army and is facing the parole board in November as his August visit was postponed due to clerical errors. He has been inside for more than 40 years. He's going to be getting a lot of pushback from the Policemen's Benevolent Association, the Fraternal Order of Police, Corrections Guards Associations, and the rest of the gallery of reactionary so-called unions for cops. These groups are on alert, as we've seen with the tug-of-war around the release of Herman Bell. Anytime an aging political prisoner, especially one accused of involvement in the killing of a cop, comes up for parole. The parole boards are often made up of former judges, DAs, prosecutors, and law enforcement, forming an added blue wall for prisoners facing paroles. So Jalil needs us to write letters of support for his release. Although some of the links are dead from the earlier parole push, you can check out the article on IGD that we link in our show notes at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org or freejalil.com. And there you can find a list of achievements that Jalil has engaged since his incarceration. Also, Jalil's birthday is coming up on October 18th, so feel free to send him a separate birthday greeting. You can check out past episodes of The Final Straw that have featured Jalil's voice thanks to an interview or series of interviews by Prison Radio on CKUT in Montreal. To support Jalil, you should follow the following instructions available from National Jericho NY. Write a letter in your own words of support for parole for Jalil. You can address it to Senior Offender Rehabilitation Coordinator, Sullivan Correctional Facility, 325 Riverside Drive, Fallsburg, New York, 12733. But don't send it to that address. Actually send it to Nora Carroll, Nora Carroll, Carroll, care of the Parole Preparation Project, 168 Canal Street, 6th floor, New York, New York, 10013. The subject line should be Anthony Bottom 77-A-4283. They're making an effort to include letters of support for Jalil that are personalized and from people who are familiar with him and his work. If you want further instructions on how to write a strong, personalized letter of support, you can email Nora at carol.nora@gmail.com. Also, please send a copy of your letter to Jalil for his files. And Jalil can be written at Anthony Bottom, number 77A4283, Sullivan Correctional Facility, P.O. Box 116, Fallsburg, New York, 12733-0116. Casey Brezek is an anarchist political prisoner who also has a parole hearing coming up. His one and only for his 12-year stint, Casey recently got married to a woman in another prison in Missouri. He's studying calculus so he can go to school to be an aerospace engineer once he's released. He goes before the parole board November 2018. He's unsure of exactly when he gets out, but he knows he isn't eligible until November 2020. He's currently saving his money and asking for help to afford a cheap vehicle when he gets out in order to transport himself to work and school. His intentions are to parole out to the St. Louis area and attend a community college until he gets his basic credits and can transfer to a university. His eyes are set on the Missouri University of Science and Technology. Casey suffers from depression and has a history of schizophrenia. He describes himself as socially awkward and says he often feels misunderstood. He has a kind heart, and he looks forward to getting out relatively soon and getting to see all of those that have shown him support over the years. He thanks you all. Casey has recently been transferred to the Farmington Correctional Center in Farmington, Missouri. In November, as I said, he will go to the parole board. Thoughtful and professional letters to the parole board by people who care about Casey and are willing to offer support to him during his transition back to life outside of prison can make it more likely that Casey will be released. More details on the letters of support that Casey needs can be found in our show notes for this episode. Again, the request is that even though letters will be addressed to the parole board that letters be sent directly to Casey, and he will deliver them to the parole board himself. You can write to Casey at Casey Brezik, that's Brezik, number 115-4765, Farmington Correctional Center, 1012 West Columbia Street, Farmington, Missouri, 63640. And more on Casey's case and support can be found at supportcasey.org. Anarchist prisoner Sean Swain is still being silenced by the state of Ohio and could use your letters. He's potentially in the process of being transferred in an interstate deal, which will make his life way harder. Sean has communicated that he has at one point been on hunger strike and is extremely isolated. You can write to Sean at Sean Swain, number 243-205, Warren, CI, P.O. Box 120, Lebanon, Ohio 45036. It's suggested that concerned listeners call ODRC Director Stuart Hudson at 614-387-0588, and that Governor's Counsel Kevin O'Donnell Stanek get called at 614-466-3555. Callers should voice concerns over Sean's health, access to communication, and the blocking of counsel from his recent RIB hearing that threatens to transfer him out of Ohio. More on Sean's case can be found at seanswain.noblogs.org. There are some North Carolina prisoners that are facing repression from alleged participation in the 2018 prison strike. First off, we have a link to an IGD article with the specific list of demands for North Carolina prisoners that Joseph Stewart wrote back in July. He was transferred after the Outside published his statement in support of the strike and has intermittently been left off of prisoner support call-ups, so he can surely use some support letters at Polk CI, where he is currently housed. You can write to Joseph at Joseph D. Stewart, number 0802041, Polk CI, P.O. Box 2500, Butner, North Carolina, 27509. Also, there are three other prisoners in North Carolina that are being held at Hyde Correctional Institution, a facility in Fairfield, North Carolina, and are being threatened with retaliation for their active support and organizing in solidarity with the national prison strike. They're facing threats of administrative repression, as are any other fellow prisoners connected to the national strike. More info can be found in our show notes. Here are the names of three that you can write. Randy Watterson, number 427985, Hyde Correctional, P.O. Box 278, Swan Quarter, North Carolina 27885. And rather than repeating the full address for each of the following, I'm just going to say the name of the prisoner and that they're at Hyde. Todd Martin, number 1071227, also at Hyde. And Jace Burris, that's JACEBURAS, number 1522417, also at Hyde Correctional. And finally, there's a statement that was recently released by the Revolutionary Abolitionist Movement, or a few chapters of that, and the Vaughn 17 support in Philly. A portion of that reads, on February 1st, 2017, after a series of peaceful protests yielded no results, incarcerated comrades took over a building at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center in Delaware to demand slight improvements in their treatment. After a 20-hour standoff, the prison's response was to literally bulldoze the barricades and figuratively bulldoze their demands, retaliating with constant beatings, destruction of prisoner property, and denial of food and medical care. Furthermore, the state accused 17 of the incarcerated with egregious offenses, even though these charges have no basis in realities. The state's response shows once again that any prisoner standing up for themselves to regain dignity and achieve decent treatment is a threat. And the state will collectively punish everyone and anyone to hide its barbarism. The role of prison guards, warden, and Department of Corrections is the perpetuation of slavery and subjugation. Unquote. So there's a call for support for the 17 who will be attending a public trial in small groups at Newcastle County Courthouse, 500 North King Street, Wilmington, Delaware, 19801. This trial starts on Monday, October 8th, and the last is slated to start on February 11th, 2019, more than 2 years after the initial events. People in the area that are interested in helping to volunteer for the court support can learn more by reading the linked IGD article in our show notes post. And we'll also post a link to the PDF that includes the addresses and a little information in the form of a poster for all 17, because I'm sure that they could use some words of encouragement.